The nature of MMA seems to bend to the whims of whoever is speaking. One minute, it's about being a sport with rules, order, and history, and the next, it's about pay-per-view buys, crazy walkouts, and social media engagement. No one can make up their mind, not even Dana. Now, Dana White doesn't like flashy walkouts, but he loves when fighters get a crowd reaction, and he loves when they move the needle. You know who doesn't move the needle? Women headlining pay-per-views, especially recently. If the UFC was fully committed to entertainment and money, this wouldn't exist. So there must be some sort of sporting aspect to MMA where these women deserve it, or they've worked hard enough to earn it. When everyone's favorite shit disturber, the MMA guru, is yelling on X, formerly known as Twitter, about needing to have a boatload of kids enrolled in BJJ classes straight out of the womb just to beat the Dagestanis, it's because he's acknowledging that MMA in the Western world needs to evolve. Is it kind of racially and culturally motivated? Yes. Is that human nature? Also yes. But the idea of changing the entertainment-focused culture of the West to compete with other nations is daunting, to say the least, especially when it's so baked into the fabric of society. If you can't beat them, might as well join them is not the correct mentality here, because they live amongst us. Yeah, it's not entirely a cultural issue. It's not like every single American is entertainment-focused. I thought about the best examples of people who put winning first, and a large number of them came from the Western world. John Fitch, Jake Shields, Josh Koscheck, GSP, a bunch of mid-2000s, early 2010s wrestlers. John Fitch in particular went 14-3-1 in the UFC, and they were reluctant to give him a title shot. And for the whole of his career in the UFC, they were chomping at the bit just looking for any little reason to release him. Colby Covington saved himself from a similar fate by putting on a facade and being entertaining. Sorry, let me fix that. And GSP and his fans have collectively Jedi mind-tricked the MMA world into believing that he wasn't boring for large portions of his career. In certain scenarios, the UFC would rather employ criminals than not so entertaining fighters. So these foreign heels, what are they up to? Muhammad Mokaev wants to be entertaining. He seems like he's almost allergic to it. Like how Gaethje is allergic to takedowns. Mokaev has the opposite disease. Something subconscious, right? Deep within his mind is the win-first mentality. On the surface, you'd think that this is about growing up in a rough part of the world, cold, unrelenting Dagestan, or other places that are war-torn or impoverished. But Francis Ngannou is the definition of entertainment value. MMA fighters who put an emphasis on winning can also just so happen to be entertaining. These two properties don't have to be mutually exclusive. Anderson Silva got finishes and was on top of the sport for like 6 or 7 years. Tom Aspinall is a great example. He's currently going crazy right now. His path to victory is early finishes. So what category does he go into? It makes sense that generally, people focused on winning will beat people focused on entertainment. There's less to think about. For example, Sean O'Malley is always focused on his fashion, his hair, growing a following on social media, streaming on Twitch, that kind of thing. For him, being an excellent fighter is a means to an end. He's never talked about legacy or being the best bantamweight of all time or being the pound-for-pound GOAT. I've never heard him utter those words. He got into the sport for money, fame, and girls. His words, not mine. Whereas Umar and the rest of Team Habib are all about legacy and glory to God. So, which is more powerful? Money, where if you get enough of it, it kind of becomes trivial? Or religion, where it's an ever-evolving, moving goalpost that can force you to be more and do extraordinary things? When I talk about the winning category, I think it needs to be defined as more risk-averse game plans. The mentality of these fighters is something along the lines of, if I lose, how does that make God look? Like he couldn't give me the strength to do this? Which also kind of goes against the God's plan narrative, but it's a story for another time. Michael Chandler has fully embraced putting entertainment first. He knew he wasn't going to have an extended run in the UFC, So he changed his fighting style, which was already entertaining, but he focused even more on throwing strikes with intent and taking as many risks as possible, not only in his fights but in his career. He's been chasing the Conor fight for over a year. People will say that he had zero fight IQ in this fight and that fight, but that's completely wrong. It's all by design. So obviously, it isn't fully about entertainment. There has to be some element of sport and prestige to add legitimacy. PFL tries their best to turn it into a full-on sport, or as close as possible, but everything feels tacky. Little point system here, comically large check there. So what needs to be done to make MMA more of a sport? The only way that we could execute a fully merit-based system would ironically be through a one-night tournament. Make them pull balls out of a lottery cage like it's the Royal Rumble, throw those boys in a bracket, and get it on. But because of the leaps and bounds that MMA has made, we can't go backwards. If the UFC so much as mentions Pride, or anything before the year 2005, the House of Mouse pulls out the clip of Yuki Kondo getting his head stomped in, and that's it. These corporate suits are so detached from the products they represent. When you're in the money printing business, it doesn't matter where you get it from. So they can water down the product and push boring fighters for the East and women to the West. Yummy yummy women's fight night main event. Abu Dhabi, Saudi Arabia, and most of the Middle East cannot produce fighters. Bilal is from Chicago, Amir Albazi is Swedish, and Hamdi is a cheater with a capital C. So they're living vicariously through other northern Muslims, and the sheiks will walk around the arena the whole fight, and then they'll stop to listen to the announcement of who won, because that's what matters to them. Results. Other sports have a similar problem. Not necessarily Muslims, but it's usually obvious that winning comes first. Hockey over the last 50 years has seen a dramatic decrease in violence as well. Fighting and aggression are built into that sport, but now it's about technique and dipsy-doodling around, which is still entertaining but not in a carnal kind of way. I think MMA's early roots in ultra-violence and spectacle have still remained, and we're never going to completely get rid of it. Unless we have to start watching people fight in VR, but that's probably a long ways away. MMA is entertainment masquerading as a sport. There is no rhyme nor reason to why matchups are made, and when they are using a bracket or point system, they just feel hokey. Mixed martial arts is in the fist of the beholder, and the best advice I can give you is to watch the fights and fighters that make you happy. The contrast of wild violence and technical victory is something we see a lot in the sport, and I actually think that pitting these two very different styles against each other can make fights even more interesting. Entertainment is subjective, winning isn't. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I greatly appreciate a like, comment, and subscribe for more MMA content, and have a good time.